I call the Powhatan County Joint Board of Supervisors and School Board Special Meeting to order. I will let the record show that all 5 Board of Supervisor members are present.
And I will call the school board joint meeting to order. And our record will state that all 5 members are present.
One thing I would like to say before we get started was I got a phone call from a citizen who, in our last joint meeting, said at times, because I guess people were not in front of the mic, that they could not understand or hear what was going on. So while we're spaced out like this, the county attorney is not coming, so if you wanted to slide a little, we could slide. Some of us could at least get in front of a microphone. But if you are going to speak, I'd ask you to try to slide to the mic and speak so that we can clearly be heard and recorded properly. Thank you. At this time, we'll do the invocation and the pledge. Mr. Walters is going to lead us in invocation. Mr. Tucker in the pledge.
Father, thank you for the bounty that you bestowed upon this county. Thank you for the blessings that you provided to us. Most importantly, for the freedom that we enjoy for a government like this, a representative democracy, and importantly, for the men and women in the armed forces and public safety, the first responders that risk their lives every day to ensure the freedoms that we enjoy. In thy name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I have any requests to postpone, add, or delete, or change the order of presentation of the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
We have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Let the motion show that passed 5-0. Do you need to approve the agenda? I don't think you do. Okay. At this time, we'll have our first public comment period. This is not a forum for criticism of or attacks on staff or specific individuals. It is also not the forum for political campaigning or promoting a business. Please keep your comments focused on the issues and subject matter over which these boards have responsibility, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Sheriff Nunley, Powhatan County Sheriff's Office. I was just going to speak briefly about the Sallyport issue that's coming up, reference to Sheriff's Office. Newly taken office, wasn't involved with the prior discussions on the Sallyport, but after speaking with many members of our local government here, I realized that the Sallyport at this time may be a drain on some of the resources that y'all are going to need for other matters. So I'd like to say at this time that if you're building a Sallyport for the Sheriff's Office, the Sheriff doesn't believe it's necessary right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nunley, for your comments. That's definitely something we'll make sure we consider as we wrestle with all the needs we need, CIP needs we have ahead of us. Seeing no one else, will close the public comment period. We'll move on to item 7A, the presentation on the joint transportation facility. And okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask Mr. Charles Tilley from BCWH Architects to come up. Roger Richardson is also in the audience, another principal architect for BCWH. They're going to give us an update on the design work that's been done so far by a joint design team from both the county and the school system on the joint transportation facility. You do have a hard copy of the presentation in front of you. If you don't have one, let me know and we'll get you one. It's in a little plastic binder, but we have an electronic copy that Charles is going to walk through. Mr. Tilley?
Can we pause for a second? Can we make sure the sheriff gets a hard copy of this so that he has it for his records, as he was not involved probably in this conversation early on too. So, but it doesn't have to be given to him now, just in the future.
Tilley?
Good evening, members of the school board and board of supervisors. My name is Charles Tilley. Thank you for this opportunity to share this project with you. Wanted to, our agenda tonight is to talk about a few things here. Project description, run through the kind of the things that we're focusing on with this project, the issues we're going to work through. And then share with you the design presentation, some floor plans and site plan, and the elevations that we're developing for the outside of the building will look like. And then talk for a second about the next steps.
Mr. Chairman, sorry for the
Yeah.
interruption. You're so tall, you're gonna have to bend forward into the microphone a
Okay.
little bit.
Fully towards me, how's that? Is that
Thank you,
better?
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The overall project scope of this project is a new vehicular maintenance facility. It's going to be on the existing site as well as a combined parcel that's adjacent next door. It's going to be a shared facility between the schools and the county vehicles. There are approximately 108 county vehicles, from fire to trucks, emergency vehicles, sheriff department vehicles, and administrative support vehicles, as well as there are 130 school vehicles with 100 buses, and then about 30 approximate cars, vehicles, light-duty vehicles that they'll be servicing. And then we're going to maintain operations of the existing building while this is under construction. So those are kind of the big overarching goals for the project.
That's a good idea, if we can.
The building program, essentially the things that are in this building, there's approximately 13,800 square feet of interior space. A large piece of that are the interior shop areas, the work bays for the vehicles. 1,000 square feet of that number, of the overall number, are training and support spaces and, office areas. The service and utility support spaces are approximately 2,400 square feet. And then there's a portion of this building that's about 1,200 square feet for the schools to operate a maintenance, some storage and maintenance shops for the schools' facilities. With all the walls and circulation spaces, the grossing factor, there's about 13,800 interior square feet. And then on the exterior of the back of the building, we have a covered work area that is about 2,500 square feet. For the total footprint of the building is 16,300 square feet. Looking at the project site, this is an aerial view of the site. The bottom of the screen here, the bottom of what you're looking at is Route 13, Old Buckingham. To the left there is the entrance to Fighting Creek Park. The orange box over in the middle is the existing property. The yellow box represents the new parcel that's been acquired to be a part of this project. One thing to point out is on that parcel, the front, it's kind of hard to see this, but the entrance to, it's kind of hard to see, I can't point this, but, what's that? Oh, right. The adjacent parcel, the property owner on the right-hand side, there is a right-of-way there that we're going to share and improve as part of this project that I'll show on this next slide. The bus garage is existing in the center there, and then the store, bus parking is in the rear. This is what the development is proposed to be. The big yellow box there in the middle is the maintenance facility. Just coming in on the left bottom there of the property is a fueling canopy that we're proposing to put over the existing fueling area. It's pretty simple. That'll look like the existing like the new building. There's a small parking lot in the front for handicap parking, visitor parking, miscellaneous small cars, and then 100 parking spaces for buses in the back, the rear of the building. Kind of hard to see, but there's the line at the top of this dissects the property in half. That's where the original property line is between the two parcels, just so for reference. In the back of the property, we have a small, the yellow building is designated as a relocated structure. There's an existing covered building on the back side of the existing bus garage. We're going to relocate that for storage of miscellaneous smaller equipment. Moving inside to the building, essentially the building is two parts. There's the large work area in the back that's the dark gray area, and then there's the support spaces and the offices along the front here. The large work area, the service area, has 5 bays that are 25 feet by 50 feet for the servicing buses and large vehicles. And then on the rear, the back right-hand corner of the building, there are 3 roll-up doors that have 3 smaller light-duty service vehicle bays. The rear area along the back is a covered work area that could be a potential filled in for future if they want to expand at some point in time. But it's also an outdoor work area slash storage space for various things. The front door of the building, or the entrance, the public entrance, is right in the middle on the bottom side of your slide there. We have 4 office spaces for a receptionist, a director, dispatch office, as well as a support person. The space that's designated as classroom is really a multi-purpose space. It's a workroom, a training space for mechanics and bus drivers, as well as a workroom for office, copier, those kind of things. The space that's on the right-hand side of the plan here is the maintenance space that'll have a separate covered entrance for loading. But this is where the school maintenance department has a small workshop and storage space for their activities.
Would you just help us with where is the existing building's footprint in this?
Existing building's footprint is over here. If you're talking about the existing building? Yes, sir. Let me back up if I can.
I thought you said earlier you were trying to,
So they're going to keep the existing building open while this one's being built?
That's correct.
One of the questions, I guess, is once that's completed, then I assume you're demolishing that building and then creating parking.
That's correct.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
It's kind of hard to see, but it's there to the left of the new building in that plan.
And then the maintenance, isn't the maintenance building right around here, though?
The current maintenance building?
Our current maintenance, where are we? Our current maintenance,
Our-
yeah, isn't
yeah.
that where our current maintenance is?
No, we vacated that building. We're now in the junior high and dispersed throughout various offices in the school.
Okay, thank you for that
The building next
clarification.
door is the county maintenance building.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
And then in between this front half of the building and the service area, we have a tire space, a space for parts, a space for the shop foreman, a parts clerk person, as well as bulk storage of fluids, oil and those kind of things. So that's the zone that's right up against where the service bays are. Moving to the outside of the building, the next slide. This is the view from Old Buckingham. This is the view standing right in front of the existing building and looking back towards the new building. The building is a pre-engineered metal building that will have a metal skin on the outside with the lower portion in the front will be primarily brick facade with 2 different color of brick. We're talking about trying to break that facade up so that it's not just one long single color brick facade. And then these are the front entry on this side, and then there's you can see the service bays there on the left. The next image is stepping back a little bit from the front door, so you can see the proposed fueling canopy that we're talking about. It's a pretty simple structure. We just want to protect the fuel pumps that are there and people that are filling their vehicles up. Moving around to the northeast facade, you can see the front entrance there to the left. This is still what you would see from Old Buckingham. There's a fence line that comes up to the side of the building here that'll separate the public-private parts of the building. So the front side will be open, the back side will be fenced in. And then we have the service bays there on the right-hand side, entrances to the service bays. And then you can kind of see it tucked behind that tree there. That's the covered area for the facility maintenance, shop access. Then rotating around to the back of the building, this is that covered work area that I was referring to that potentially could be a future bay if it needed to be enclosed for expanding the facility. But essentially, it's a storage area, a work area, as well as a place for used fuels and used oil and those kind of things. So the next steps that we're looking at here, we want to complete the site plan for review and approval by the county, the planning department, and complete our bid documents by March this year, and bid the project in April of this year with the potential for starting construction in July. We think this is a 10-month construction project to build this for occupancy, and that would be around April of May of next year. This could be occupied. But one of the issues that working with the same way the middle school is, we've got the fire, water suppression issue that we need to work through, because that's one of the components that we need for this project as well.
Okay, before we take questions, there's several members of the design team that are here. Russell Wilson, Larry Johns, Ramona Carter, Brian Bartlett, I don't think I'm missing anybody, but they all work for the design of the process and were consulted, and Ramona, we appreciate, was kind of our liaison with the county and bringing us back information, so thank her for her work in getting us information that we needed about the county fleet and needs. And at this time, if there are any questions for Mr. Tilley?
I guess it could be for Mr. Tilley or someone else. So you're showing 1,000 100 parking spaces for buses. What is the current parking for the buses we have? Is that a reduction or an increase, or what?
It's definitely an increase. It's about 86.
Okay.
Is that 86 now?
Well, how many buses do we have now? No, I mean, how many buses?
You have 86 parking spaces. I don't know how many
We have,
buses you have.
we have 93 total buses, and 86 parking spaces for those buses. And again, the only time really that all the buses are parked there is during the summer, when we rotate them through and do a lot of the maintenance over the summer. So we feel like 100 spaces will be enough to accommodate not just the school buses, but also county vehicles, for parking for the larger county vehicles as well.
Just so you know, Kim, if I may add, when they're stored now in the summer, those buses are absolutely mirror to mirror. They are packed in there as tight as you can get them. So it'd be nice to have the extra space.
So this is more, I guess, for Mr. Richardson, since he's sitting in the audience. I have a question for you. So, Mr. Richardson, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Mr. Melton?
Good. We sat on many planning commission meetings and architectural review committees and standards, and you coached us many times about the alternative uses of building materials to make sure that you presented a nice-looking package.
Sure.
So in your estimation, the metal building in with this brick facade, how do I want to say this correctly, brings a nice-looking building to the county versus some of those that we kind of cringed as we worked through those issues over the years.
Sure. This will absolutely be gorgeous. There's no question about it.
Okay.
But, being serious, the blend of materials, the wrapping of the materials, and the fact that it does turn the corners and that sort of thing, gives you the ability to really kind of focus on the fact that this, one, is a service building, but two, it brings the brick material to the site, grounds it a little bit. It also honors the fire station, which is next door, which is brick.
Good.
So that, too, is a pre-engineered building, by the way.
Yeah.
So I think, and we think generally, that not only is it attractive, but it does conform to the ordinances that we work together to get
Thank you,
put in
Roger.
place.
Great question.
Thank you.
Thanks for the answer.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I got a couple questions. And this is, thank you for the presentation, by the way. This is very helpful. This is for, I'm looking around, Russell, Larry, even Brian, whoever would like to chip in on this. When I toured the existing facility, ignoring the condition of the building, which I think is getting pretty bad, there were two things that were brought up over and over. One is not enough space for part storage, and the other was not enough space for tire storage. And tire storage is a tricky thing because you can't leave them out in the sun and all that. Does this current design fix both of those problems, in the opinion of everybody I just mentioned, and including you, Mr. Tilley?
Well, I'll start that. We have, one thing that I didn't mention, in the green area here in the plan is a parts room, which is on the ground level, but we also have a mezzanine that'll be above that for, extra filters and larger, quantities of things that you're not gonna need every day. So there is an additional, in addition to that green area, there is additional parts storage within this. On the tire side, we think that's enough space for the number of tires that we've been talking about, which is 100. Because the tires come already, on a rim and ready to go, and they're just installed here. They're not, there's not a lot of tire equipment, so.
Okay.
Those type of things I believe we've covered in terms of the number of tires and parts that they need.
Okay. Okay. I see Brian nodding his head. We started this discussion during my first campaign ever, probably the first week I was campaigning. So I'm happy. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I piggyback on this tire thing before we move on?
Yes.
So is there storage space for the used tires? We don't want stacks of them behind the building and in the courtyard, et cetera, et cetera. What do we do with them?
Correct.
Microphone.
Brian, could you
it's in the
please come to the
same room.
microphone? Brian, can you please come to the microphone? Thank you.
Yes, sir, that is because I figured in the used tires because we do have those that sit there for a week to 2 weeks at a time until they rotate out. It also has figured in for car tires at the police or any other vehicles that we'd have.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick
Yes,
question.
go ahead.
I don't know who this is going to be directed to, but just as a refresher, are we going to be doing the deputy vehicles as well? And by that, I mean routine maintenance. Obviously, you're not going to be doing the technical stuff that accompanies the vehicle. Is that correct?
That is the plan, yes, sir.
That was
Okay.
my understanding, was that routine maintenance stuff would be done, but nothing that was technical to the aspect of
No, the computer systems or
computer
anything
systems
like
and all the
that.
other things, but just the
But
routine
for
maintenance.
brake repairs,
Change
things like
oil.
changing oil.
And the fire folks have also told us, David, as you remember, that some of their equipment is so technical in the pumping that it will still be taken.
I'm getting there.
Gotcha, sorry.
I'm getting there.
Apologize.
So my next question would be, the routine maintenance, with the fire and EMS trucks. Obviously, again, as you just mentioned, the more sophisticated stuff that accompanies those vehicles, we're not going to be touching that. But the routine maintenance, we'll be doing that. Is that correct?
Yes,
Dr.
it is
Jones?
correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And this is a question for later on down the road, but maybe this is for the budget time. Anticipating the build date, if it's a 10-month construction, you won't start in July. What is the projected number of additional employees that we're going to have to add to do the maintenance that we're not doing now?
We're,
And I'm not looking for an answer necessarily tonight, like I said. That might be a budget question.
it's part of our budget calculations, something that we're certainly aware of and looking at. We're going to be adding at least one mechanic and possibly two, but we're still looking at that data. We're working on an agreement to come forward between the county and the school system in terms of staffing and how that's paid for. And we hope to have that available to distribute soon, so everybody can look at it and review it.
Well, it's only been 27 years, right?
That's right.
Mr. Chairman, I
Ms.
have
Walter, go ahead.
two questions, if I could, sir. And before I ask them, I do want to say, I would like to thank Larry and Russell for the tour that you gave me on the 15th. I appreciate you coordinating that. That helped me quite a bit to learn more about the property, and I thank you for that, for you taking time out of your schedule to do that. The questions that I have, and I want to go back to the tire issue just for a minute, because I just want to feel comfortable that we're all agreeing to the same thing. The pursuit-rated tires that the law enforcement vehicles will be using are different than the tires that will be going on our regular cars, are different than the truck tires on our trucks, which will have to be mounted. They're not going to come on a rim. We're talking about school bus tires that will be on a rim. The fire vehicles will be using different sorts of tires, just so that we have consensus. This is adequate space to store for the variety of types of vehicles that we have in our fleet at this time. Everybody's comfortable with that.
Why don't you just come over here and stay?
And I asked, and while you're coming to the podium, I'm just going to say, I asked that because, you know, the Ford Crown Victoria takes a different sort of tire than the Dodge Charger, which takes a different tire than the Chevrolet Impala, a different size tire. So we're talking about a real variety, and I know you're probably not going to order a lot to keep on stock at any one time, but I would just hate to spend this kind of money and at the end of the day realize we do not have adequate space.
Mr. Bartlett, would you just state your name, so?
Brian Bartlett, bus garage supervisor. To kind of give you a rundown, I guess, on the tires, anything we would put on has to be load rated based on what the vehicle's designed for. So to cover that, it would be very hard to stock every size tire.
I agree.
So we would set up with a vendor to be able to get them within a day, have the tires brought to us. We would mount them there for a car, and have the vehicle put back in service.
And actually,
You
that
may end up keeping, because I know they have Tauruses and Chargers,
Exactly.
you may have some of the wheels and tires already mounted that you'd be able to switch out easily.
Yeah, I was really hoping that was the answer you were going to provide, to be honest with you, that we wouldn't be stocking a huge inventory, but that we were thinking in a proactive way. All right, so the other thing I'll ask you about the diagram that we have here, where are we going to be storing things like the used fluids, the fluids you're taking out of vehicles that by themselves we wouldn't want to keep too
The
long?
covered area that they're talking about in the back is where we're looking at putting tanks to do that.
Okay.
Hopefully, we would look at some type of heating system that would use the recycled used oil.
Great.
So that we would burn that. That tank would be there, and any other fluids would be kept in tanks there.
Thank you, sir. That's great, and thank you for the answers to those questions. I just have one more, and then you can have the mic. One more I've got. That building is on Route 13, which in this district, that is a main thoroughfare for us. Lots of people are going to drive by every day. What is the life expectancy on a building that is a metal fabricated building like that? I think that Mr. Wilson told me we got something, the current one was built somewhere in the 40s, so we certainly got our money's worth out of this one. What's the life expectancy?
Well, I think the finish that we're going to specify on the outside, which is by far the first thing that's going to go if it goes, so we're talking about a 30-year, finish warranty on what's there. But I would say it's definitely not as long as brick, but it should be in the 30-year range, I would say, for sure.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question. Looking at the mezzanine above, what is the access point for the mezzanine? And do you have any means to get a pallet full of parts up there so the guy's not having to run these up and down stairs?
Well, we're going to have a door that, above the door that's there, that they can lift from the ends, from the shop area side. But that mezzanine was not really envisioned as a, heavy loading, like thousands of, cans of oil or that kind of thing. It's really, filters and lighter duty kind of storage for bulk stuff that they might have that they need to put somewhere. Another thing that they store on site are occasional, they need a new a seat, so they have several of those. That kind of stuff is what we're looking to put up top.
I mean, is it sort of forklift access or?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, one more. Mr. Tucker's reference to the used tires and recycling of old tires or whatever reminded me, and anybody can, including Chief Singer, you can pitch in if you want. What are we doing right now with the old firehouse behind Henry's Market across from the new firehouse we have? And can that be used for storage for any of these old tires or any of the old fluids or old parts that we don't need to put in the new building. Is that a possibility?
The roof leaks.
I know it gets wet in there, but I don't think old tires we're gonna recycle care.
To the best of my knowledge, and I have to check with Floyd sitting in the office, but I think, in the seats here, I think it actually belongs to the volunteer department. I don't believe that's a county facility. Is that correct, Floyd?
No, that is a county
Oh, it
facility.
is a county facility?
is, yeah.
Then we can look at that. I know it needs some roof repairs, but
Right?
we
Yeah,
would
I'm
need
aware it
probably
gets
do
a
some-
little wet in there.
Yeah, we'd have to do some maintenance to it to get it to that specification, but we could.
Okay. If needed, is that a possibility? To keep old things that don't care about the weather in there? Maybe? Okay. Thank you.
One more thing on the tires. On the school buses, our recap tires, or a recap tire, we use new tires on the rear and we recap them at least 2 times. I have a vendor that stocks those in stock, so I only get what I'm gonna need at a time. So that's probably 3 sets for the buses at one time. So I may have another 120 that are stored off-site. They're all calculated. I have a form that I keep up with what we have in inventory that's off-site. The school buses are the only thing we use the old tires for. Rescue squads, fire trucks, any of that, they're gonna be virgin casing tires, brand new. When you take them off, the vendor's gonna give you something for that case.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Bartlett, I'm assuming that you will use the same type of computer programming that you're using now to schedule your maintenance, so you'll know ahead of time when you need to order parts and when to bring vehicles in, that you'll be able to incorporate buses and sheriff's department cars and other vehicles into that program that you're using now?
Yes, sir. What we do now is on the buses and any of the school vehicles, when they fuel up, the mileage they put in, we download every morning and are able to put it into our maintenance software, be able to tell within 250 to 500 miles when a vehicle's due service, notify whoever it is and schedule accordingly.
The reason I bring it up is because I was very impressed with that program that you're using. It seems to be pretty sophisticated from my point of view, and that would help answer and alleviate some of the storage concerns that people are talking about at this point.
Yeah, and once you get to doing maintenance on the vehicles, you're gonna know what's coming up for its next service. I mean, we look at a bus every 40 days. You're gonna probably do something like that with a police car within every 30 days, just because of the miles that they run.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
A very specific question, and Mr. Bartlett has made it clear to us in the past that the overhead doors of the existing facility weren't built high enough to accommodate new buses. We're making sure, back when that building was built, nobody asked the question, are the buses gonna get taller? Y'all are answering that question in your architecture, that we don't look at this picture 5, 7, 10 years from now and say, uh-oh, instead of 13 feet tall, they're 13 and 8 inches, and they no longer go in the bay. Y'all covered that, right?
These are 16 feet tall, so
Yeah, right.
I hope they're not traffic taller, but
I do have a couple of questions also. What about land abatement on that site?
you mean hazardous materials
Yes.
abatement?
Uh-huh.
The existing site, we know there is some asbestos in the ceiling and the windows that are existing there. We're thinking about that in the demolition part of the project. As far as we understand, the adjacent property that's been purchased, there is a clear letter for that one that doesn't have any abatement.
It's already been
So,
abated.
Okay.
we are not aware of any other environmental conditions on the site. Now, it is an old repair garage that's been there for 50-plus years, so there may be something under the building that we don't know about, but to
Okay.
the best of our knowledge, we don't have any of that information right now.
Okay, and what about the existing fuel tanks? Will there be new ones?
Right now, the plan is to just cover what's there with a new canopy.
Okay.
You know, the existing tanks that are in the ground and the existing pumps and everything, just to,
Okay.
minimize the budget, but that's the plan right now is just to cover what's there.
Okay, and it doesn't show in here, and, I mean, I don't even know why I want to know, I just want to know. Is there a lift, or is there going to be a pit in how are they going to access the?
Right now, we're looking at least one in-ground lift for the really heavy equipment, like the fire trucks and those kind of things. There's an existing 10,000-pound lift that they use for small vehicles. We're at a 12,000-pound lift.
Okay,
So we're covering that, I think, in terms of those pieces of equipment.
okay. That was all I had.
Couple of closing comments, or are we?
Any other questions or comments at this time? Go ahead.
Really appreciate the fact that you are designing the building for the potential expandability in the future if necessary. Thank you for doing that. I think the high school was built similarly, and I think that always in the back of our mind as a good decision that was made many years ago. Instead of having to knock down stuff, you built it so that it could be expanded, so bravo for that. And finally, as Mr. Williams pointed out, we're approaching the third decade now in talking about this. Mr. Cole has been around for those decades, I think. Ms. Ayers, some part of the decades. Mr. Williams, Mr. Melton, myself, and certainly the school administration staff has been struggling with this decision for a long time, and this is as far along as we've ever gotten. I'm very pleased.
Just one question, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, March, but, so setbacks and from the road and all that will be met just like any other parcel? Okay. And then the landscaping, the pretty trees, because, I mean, when you look at the front cover, which shows the existing bus garage, and you flip to the page with the new, I mean, there's no comparison. You know, the existing garage has the mechanicals all showing to the road. All those things that Roger and I, Mr. Williams, all us worked on to correct in the future, this will go away. So I'm excited that we're finally talking about it. I too have toured it. I've dealt with it for 16 years as my planning commission and board of supervisors. Hopefully we're ready to work this thing in and get it done. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tilley. It's kind of part two of this presentation, and kind of to carry on an issue that we discussed last week, and that is water for fire suppression, not only for this joint transportation facility, but for the Powhatan Middle School, the new middle school. As promised, Steve Rao from Timmons Engineering is here. He's going to go through our progress to date on this issue. You also have a hard copy of his presentation. It's the stapled set of papers that have the dark green cover. Mr. Rao?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Rao, and I work for Timmons Group. Excuse me. I am the project manager for both the transportation facility as well as the middle school, and for all things civil engineering related. And I brought my water specialist, Wes Honeyus, here in case you guys get too technical with your questions. Just to start with a little bit of background, I know that Mr. Westmoreland talked about the middle school last week and touched on the subject of water. So we're here to give you a status update, progress, if you will, on where we stand with that. It's an ongoing effort. We started with this with the knowledge and understanding that both of these facilities, current facilities, have both water and sewer provided by the county, and water specifically provided by the Aqua Virginia system for the Courthouse Road area. So we had anticipations early on that we might need to boost pressures for either domestic and fire protection, but we certainly did not expect that we wouldn't have the quantity of water available for either of those. So what we've learned here over the last few months in working with Aqua Virginia is that that system does not have the quantity or volume of water available in order to provide fire protection services to meet today's building and fire codes. So we're coming to you today with some solutions to that we've come up with. This is still a work in progress, but we're ultimately looking to solve the problem of 180,000 gallons of water that we need for fire protection. And that's for each of these projects. And that's considering the type of building, the use, the fact that they're both going to be fully sprinklered facilities, et cetera. So the first option that we've got here in front of you.
So just for clarity, I guess you're saying 180 gallons for each building, so they're combined?
Each project, if they were standalone projects, would
Right.
require that 180,000 gallons.
Okay.
We're talking 360,000
Gallons of water.
That's correct.
So you're
So
talking.
we're going to talk about them separate, but then we're also going to talk about them together.
Okay.
So the first option is to put a 180,000 gallon tank on each property along with a fire pump. And that would provide water to the sprinkler system for the building, as well as pressurize the hydrants, the fire hydrants on the site for connecting hose to and being able to fight a fire with a hose. That would not be used for potable water, for domestic use, for sinks and toilets and that sort of thing. That would continue to be served by the Aqua system. So that, as you can see, option number one comes with a price tag of about $1.8 million and about 12 to 18 months to get through design, permitting, bidding, and construction. Option number two is, to answer your question, kind of a hybrid of that. It's using one tank and one fire pump to serve both projects or both facilities. So just one 180,000 gallon tank and pump, but we would have to install a water line to connect the two campuses essentially. What we've shown here is being able to do that on county property, not having to go across anyone else's property. I believe that's the Fighting Creek parcel. So we save, in this option, about $300,000 by not having to put up, actually more than that, for not having to put up that second tank and fire pump, but we spend a good bit of that on water line. Same scenario, though, it's feeding the sprinkler systems for the buildings and the fire hydrants, but not your drinking water and such. So the third option is taking it a step further and looking a little bit more towards the future and a broader area. So this is proposing a 500,000 gallon tank that would be an elevated storage tank. And this is in line with your utility master plan. So it allows for a lot of future growth. It allows for domestic use in the Courthouse Road area, and it also allows for fire protection water as well. This, again, could be put, in any of these scenarios, the tank could be put on either piece of property, but again, we would connect piping from one to the other. So in this particular case, since the master plan calls for increasing the water line sizes along Old Buckingham Road, that's what we've indicated here. So essentially, this is taking the first step or the first phase of a master plan and putting it to use now with these two projects, and then that can be expanded in the future. So this can be used initially as just fire protection water, or it could be used to connect to the Aqua system and be used for domestic and fire protection. There's a lot of different things to consider in this option. We continue to talk with Aqua Virginia to figure out what will work best for the system, but we also want to be considerate of the county needs and the school system needs first. This comes with a price tag of $3.1 million and takes a bit longer to get through the design, the permitting, construction, et cetera. I've got here listed 18 to 30 months for that. To give you an idea what I'm talking about in some of these different options, the first couple options, when we're talking about a ground storage tank and fire pump, we're talking about the image on the left with the blue tank, and that's roughly, they can vary in size, but that's a 180,000 gallon tank, and that's roughly 30 feet in diameter and about 45 feet tall. And so to put it in perspective, the elevated tank next to it is about 170 feet tall, and that's for 500,000 gallons. I know one of the things that we've talked about is the fact that early on, if you were to go the route of the elevated tank, maybe there isn't a need for that full volume of water. So wouldn't necessarily have to fill it all the way. Maybe we only fill it halfway, but we have to maintain at least 180,000 gallons in there in case there's a fire at any of these facilities. But anything above that can be used for daily use if so desired. And then, again, it allows for future expansion so that you've got the ability to fill that all the way up in the future. extend the rest of your water lines out, enlarging them and making it a system that's better for the whole community. And then lastly is just a kind of a summary of the three options that we talked about and the cost for each. With that, glad to answer any questions that I can or call my lifeline every year.
Mr. Chairman,
Go right ahead, Mr. Williams.
thank you.
You're probably going to ask my question, but go ahead.
Yeah,
I think we'll probably, go
yeah,
ahead.
you might be right. You mentioned, with the 360,000 gallons being non-potable water that wouldn't be used except for fire suppression. Where's that water coming from?
Well, that's another thing that we've got to figure out. We've either got to be able to use the Aqua Virginia water to fill that tank, or we can go another route, which would be to drill a well of our own.
Okay, my next question is how much capacity does Aqua Virginia have in the village area?
I believe the report I saw was just over 100,000, maybe 120,000
That's my
gallons of water.
understanding.
Okay.
That's my understanding. So if you did, decrement that capacity for fire suppression, is that water amount, or is that 360,000 available?
Well, that's really we're talking about a one-time filling of that tank. We would fill the tank or the tanks, depending on which option you go with, and that water just sits there. I think annually you've got to do some testing of the fire pump to make sure that it's operational and whatnot, and you use some of that water to do that, but not a tremendous amount of that water. So it's for the most part, it's a one-time filling of the tank for this scenario, where it's just dedicated to fire protection.
So you wouldn't have any replenishment issues, except from the testing?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman? I'll
Yes, you go ahead. Yeah,
So-
I got
so-
a follow-up, so.
As you are doubtlessly aware, we're also noodling the Cobbs Creek Reservoir and pipeline from the Department of Corrections up 522. Are all of these scenarios compatible with that eventuality when and if it occurs 5 years, 7 years, 15 years, 20 years from now?
Well, the first couple options where we're talking about putting in just the blue ground storage tank, all that serves as fire protection for these two projects, and that's it. The third option with the elevated storage tank absolutely would be expandable to include any of those options.
Help me understand why the in-ground couldn't use the DOC water again. If you fill it one time, as you pointed out, in anticipation of an emergency, and we're getting our 55 million gallons a day from the Department of Corrections, why couldn't we use it? Help me understand your logic.
I don't think he's,
I'm not sure I understand.
I don't
the
think he's
question.
saying that.
Well, then tell me what he's saying. Sorry.
Let me take a stab at it.
Go ahead.
He's using the water that's dedicated, the private water that we have in the village, and it's through Aqua Virginia. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
And what he's saying is that we've got a little bit over 100,000 gallons available. So if we're going to use the 360 for the tanks, that would be a one-time fill-up. And there wouldn't be a replenishment issue, a significant replenishment issue, because you'd only be using a limited amount of water to test every year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So going back to your question, Cobbs Creek and DOC, when we did the facilities, study,
Right.
and we looked at the cost estimates, now that, we brought it up Route 6 and we brought it, underneath 522. When we were looking at those cost estimates to bring it up 522 and over to 60, we were looking at, and help me, Johnny, I think we was looking at $30-some million in that
That's in
neighborhood.
CIP.
Excuse me? Oh, 10 million off. Okay. So that's a significant amount of money, and as you said, Mr. Tucker, that's down the road. So right now, what we're talking about is using or decrementing on a one-time basis the 100 and some thousand gallons that we have right here in the village through the private system.
One time.
One time.
And I think what he's
Unless
saying.
we have multiple fires year over year.
And I think what he's saying is that two smaller tanks would probably not be beneficial to tie into the new system if you ever ran it up 522 into 60. But the 500-gallon tank could be a tank that you could tie into your new water system. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, okay, the one issue I see on the tower is the time frame. If we have a school project that has an 18-month completion date tentative, and that tower is 18 to 30, I'm assuming we have to have the fire suppression capability the minute that building is occupied. Is it feasible to have temporary water storage until that option C would be completed? Would the scenario be if that's what the case went?
That's something that we have talked about, but we have not come to any conclusion on just yet.
Well, and up part to go off of his, if you're gonna have the bus garage done by May 17th, and the earliest you're talking about, even on the small ones, was 12 to 18 months, then you'd have a building that you build and would have no fire suppression if you don't have those done. So, you know,
Mr. Chairman, you're exactly right. That was what I was thinking. If you're looking at a 10-month construction beginning in July, and you're looking at these various options that are time spans that exceed, you know, what your construction schedule is there something in between that we can do that feeds into the larger project, you know, that's going to be accomplished with the extended period of time that exceeds the 10 months construction?
We've started these discussions just this week, in fact, knowing that, you know, the middle school project isn't far off from working with this schedule. The transportation facility is certainly
Yes.
a different animal, and
Yeah.
we've yet to talk with this gentleman here about it, but he's on our list.
We're getting
They
ready.
have been in contact with the fire marshal, and the fire marshal and Assistant Chief Schofield have been meeting with them about the water and the different things. There are several options that we could go with, whether they maintain a fire watch inside the building, or depending on the design of the construction, that we could get a better rating fire-wise there, that we might have to, you know, it won't be as bad as what it is. But, and there's a possibility it could tie just the bus garage into the domestic system until we get that in there, because you don't need the big amount for both. So the fire marshal's working with them on that.
Okay, well,
Figuring out.
what I think everybody up here on stage is going to be looking for from you and from the folks at Timmons is, what is that interim solutions that we can look at, and what the costs are, and what are the benefits of one of those solutions versus the other in terms of long-term?
Yes, sir. I'll get that. The fire marshal, unfortunately, is out this week, but I will get with him and make sure.
So
They've been meeting.
you'll have something back to us fairly quickly, given their,
Hopefully, yes.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you
Thank
got
you.
our head shaking yes now. Don't blow it.
No pressure, Steve.
Any
Mr.
other-
Chairman, I do. I
Yes,
have
go ahead, Joe.
One question or statement, and I have the distinct pleasure of enjoying the opportunity to say for a few more meetings that I'm the new member on the school board, so I'll take advantage of this. We are all in agreement that we were not going to demolish and vacate the existing bus garage until the new one is completely operational. So I don't know that it precludes moving forward with that plan just because the water is not ready the day that the building is finished.
Good point.
Because we do have the old building.
That's true.
We occupy the old building until the water issue is completed, and then we move to the new building and move forward with the demolition.
Great point.
So
Right.
the water plans and the middle school more or less mesh on the
Yes, sir.
calendar.
That would be my hearing of what was been discussed, is that I don't see that the issue is as great as it initially appeared because of the situation with the bus garage, that we're not immediately vacating that structure.
Good point.
Of course, it has
Can I
Let me
ask
ask a follow-up question, because, you know, you raise a good issue. So I'm clear, are you saying that we go ahead and start construction, but we don't occupy the building until the water solution comes forward, and we stay in the old building? Is that correct? Is that, I don't want to misinterpret what you're saying.
Well, I don't know. I know that my modest stipend as a school board member does not qualify me to be an architect, but what I was hearing was that we were talking about something that seemed to preclude the bus garage because of the timeline that was associated with the water issue. So I'm simply saying that the plan, as I understand it, is that we occupy the existing bus garage transportation facility until the point when the new building is completed. But the new building would not be completed to a point we could occupy it until the water issue is resolved. We know we're talking about a window of time that is a matter of 60 to 90 days from the point where the completion is, as I hear the discussion. So I don't know that it precludes moving forward with the project because we have a certainty that there is a water solution. It's simply when we can have the building permit cleared for occupancy.
I think you're both saying the same thing.
Well, what I'm
Then I absolutely agree
looking,
with you.
what I'm looking at is, what is the lag time between, you know, when we have completed the construction of the new facility and when we can actually occupy that facility when we get the water solution in place? Is it 6 months? Is it 2 months? Is it a year? What is the lag time?
I'm gonna, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
60 to 90 days, right?
Well, I think that's still
Around.
to be determined, yeah, it depends on what we work out with the fire marshal and the fire department. But yes, something 60 to 90 days. One other possibility that we're exploring is a feature of the Joint Transportation Facility is that because of its size and having the 3 bays, it exceeds the square footage that would be necessary to install fire suppression. So one of the things that we're also looking at is could we use the 2 bays until the fire suppression is, and block off the other 2 bays, and again, this would be working and getting permission from the fire marshal, but if we're not using those 2 bays, then we would be within the square footage that we're using, that we wouldn't require fire suppression, so that we could use the new building, but not utilize it fully. It would still be better than using the existing building that we have and more efficient. So that's another option that we're looking at.
Well, that's great then, because, you know, it looks like now, you know, we got more than just the option that's dependent on the water.
Correct. That's a possibility, but again, that we still have to run that by all those people that have to make that
And
decision.
as Ayers is saying, it's only a baseball throw from the fire department.
That's true.
Right next door,
We
so it
talked
makes
about
us
that
feel
as
safe,
well.
right?
In case of an emergency,
So
it's like,
is that
hello,
something that
help.
you guys are going to do, is that Eric's job? I mean, Stephen's job?
That is something that we're in contact, the architects and Mr. Rao are in contact with Stephen and his people to look at all those different options. Fire watch,
I got you.
not using full capacity of the building, all of those.
Okay.
A question just back to your original part of this, where we go 2 small tanks or 1 large tank. Is, long-term operationally, which one is going to be most cost-effective for us? Are there any figures on that? I mean, we're talking about a 12-inch water line, probably, what, 3/4 of a mile or something like that? Or you're talking 2 tanks fairly close to, in location to the buildings where they go. And I know there is an old well at Powhatan High School that might figure into this somewhere if you had a tank at the new middle school. So just give me an idea, you know, we're not only talking about the cost of putting these things up, we're talking about the cost long-term.
Long-term,
You
right.
guys have managed water systems or have some knowledge of water systems. Give us kind of a scenario of what what your recommendation would be. We know what the recommendation is on cost. What's the recommendation in terms of operationally?
Great question. And I'm going to get Wes to come up here and answer that. He's a lot more familiar with that than I am.
Thanks, Steve. Wes Hines with Timmons Group, Senior Project Manager in the Water Wastewater Infrastructure Division. In terms of long-term O&M and maintenance, operation and maintenance of a facility like this, the ground storage tank with a fire pump, that's a mechanical piece of equipment that's going to have to be maintained and tested. There's electrical costs associated with that also. The elevated tank, you're storing that water up in the air, you're using gravity essentially to supply the water pressure. So long-term, the ground storage tank with fire pump would be more costly to own and operate, most likely, than the elevated tank would. I don't have specific numbers for you there, but in general, that's the way we tend to analyze it.
So if you've got 2 tanks, it's going to cost us
Yes.
theoretically more than operating 1 tank in a 3/4 mile
Yes.
water line.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I follow up on on Rick's question? Can you give us a timeline where the figures cross? You know, based on the maintenance of the 2 ground tanks versus the above-ground tank, you know, that you talked about. When do we start seeing that it's a wash? How many years? And I don't expect you to answer that tonight.
Yeah.
You know, that's another take-home.
That's something we could look at.
Yeah, some homework.
I will say that the elevated tank, that's the type of thing you would paint every 10 to 15 years. That's the major maintenance that would happen. I think the county's currently looking at doing that to the flat rock tank.
We're getting ready to do it right now.
Yeah.
that's a placeholder.
So if we have the both sets of figures, you know, what is the maintenance on the ground tanks, what's the maintenance, you know, on the above ground? And we have the number of years showing the cost and when those lines cross. That would help us in planning going forward.
Understood.
One other thing, if I could add, the 2 tanks versus 1 tank is, we're talking about a tank at the junior high that's 30 or 40 feet in diameter, then surrounded by a fence to protect it. Finding a location for that behind that junior high is not going to be easy without impinging upon our precious athletic playing fields that we need. So that may be another factor to consider in the 2 versus 1.
Could it go behind on that corner of the parcel of the school bus garage? It looks like it's kind of sitting there. Little triangle. The triangle?
The 1 tank could definitely go there. It's just if we did 2 tanks for each site.
Okay.
Option 2 would work that way, option 1.
Right, I understand.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Wilson, what's the capacity of that big tank at the junior high school now? That one that's sitting behind the pump, what we used to call the pump house over top of the old well up there. That's of no use at all?
I think it's 15,000.
15,000, so we're looking at something way bigger than that. Okay.
But one thing as a reminder, the Pocahontas, the middle school, Pocahontas Elementary, we have a water storage tank there and a fire pump that we share between those 2 buildings. So a viable solution in my mind, if you want to go, what's the lowest cost going in, again, working through fire and building inspections, if we can put a 180,000 gallon ground storage tank with a pump to service both facilities, is probably going to be the cheapest route going in. Bearing that in mind, you're looking at over $1 million expenditure to go that route, that when and if the DOC or the Cobbs Creek water system comes through there, that system pretty much becomes obsolete because you can take that pressure off of the county lines then to serve your buildings. So that $1.5 million is no good to you versus the $3 million tank solution. Just something to consider, but I think the cheapest option would be a shared tank and pump between the 2 facilities, if that's allowed.
Mr. Chairman, one question about the water line. If the county put an elevated tank, and we're talking about a 12-inch water line to service the other facilities, if 12 inches is a requirement of the fire suppression flow, how can the county piggyback development onto that line? And would it have to go to a 16-inch line to be safe, assuming that the county may want to put an elevated tank in? How much would that line have to be upsized to allow for future growth?
But that's something that could be looked at. I will say that the master plan that was adopted last year shows a 12-inch water line on Old Buckingham Road. And essentially, this project would construct the tank and a portion of that water line to serve the domestic and fire uses along that stretch of road.
So for servicing just the fire suppression needs of the school, it does not need to be 12 inches from a flow standpoint.
We'd recommend a 12 for that size, for that type of use anyway. Incremental size of water lines, either 8-inch or 12 inches, is what you typically talk about for this size project, and 12 would provide better flow.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for this. Okay, we're going to go to B. 7B, Public Safety Radio System.
Yes, Chief Singer is going to present this item. And you have in front of you on the dais a PowerPoint presentation that at the top of it says CDI LR Kimball.
Evening, Joint Boards. As you remember, last year, Pat put me in charge of heading up the replacement of the public safety radio system. So we went out and RFP'd and got an engineering firm to come in and help us. And that engineering firm is LR Kimball, and tonight we have Jack Doherty, who has a presentation for you of the assessment they've done of our current system and some options as we have go moving forward.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present. I put this presentation together. I tried not to be too technical. I'm not a technical guy. I'm a project manager, and my background, I did 26 and a half years in law enforcement, ran a statewide radio system before I started working for Kimball. So I tried to keep it low-tech, just to inform you on the tasks that we've undertaken, the work that's been done so far, and the recommendations that we came up with for the county. We did this assessment process, and you'll see that there's several different sections to the process that we used. First, we did an infrastructure assessment. We assessed the current radio system, all of your sites, all of your equipment. We did a needs assessment. That's an assessment of what the end users, the sheriff's office, fire rescue need. And then we went into recommendations and designs based on the findings that we have. It's important to have both of those things. First of all, we want to have that infrastructure assessment to baseline your current system so that we can improve on that system. And we also need to find out what the needs of the end users are. A lot of times we're asked to, can you show us, give us a recommendation for a system? Well, we can't do that until we find out what the end users need, what problems they're having with the current system. The infrastructure assessment took several steps. We first met with Chief Singer and Floyd and some other staff to go over the existing system background. Floyd was kind enough to impart on us all of his background knowledge of the current system and give us all the system documentation, which was a big help. Most of the time when we do something like this, there is no documentation and nobody knows much about the system. So it was a big help. He certainly deserves some kudos for the assistance he gave. So we reviewed the existing subscriber equipment. That's the equipment that is carried portable radios, mobile radios in the cars. We did an analysis of the current system, which is a conventional VHF 5-channel, 6-site system. And I bring that up because you're going to see some terminology about some of the newer types of systems that will be recommended. We did comprehensive site surveys. We sent a team out to each one of the sites. They went to each one of these sites and they examined the radio equipment that's there, the buildings that are there, the towers, the power requirements, backup power, every aspect of that site, documented it, inventoried it, and checked to make sure that it's in compliance with current standards. We did a review of the FCC licensing for the current system, so we know what you have. We also did an existing system coverage analysis, and we produced coverage maps showing what the coverage of the current system is. We did mobile receive, mobile transmit, portable on the street. You'll see some of these terms being mentioned later on, and receive and transmit in building, and also an analysis of the current paging system. We also validated this coverage in 2 steps. We actually went out and did some performance testing. One of our team members and Floyd went out and validated some of these spots using signal strength measurements. And we also reviewed some of these coverage areas in the stakeholder interviews when we interviewed some of the end users to make sure that there were no other areas that we missed, that they're having coverage problems in. We analyzed the microwave and backhaul. That's actually what connects one site to another. Paging system, and then we produced an infrastructure assessment report for the county. Basically, the existing system, it's very simple in design and operation, but it's an outdated analog system. And the most important point to take out of this presentation, the current system does not meet public safety standards right now. So that's really the high-level overarching thing that came out of the assessment. It's not a public safety grade system. It probably was when it was first put in. It's just not now. Most of the critical components in the existing system are near end of life or beyond end of life. That's the consoles, repeaters, some of the microwave equipment, and the subscriber equipment that's carried by the end users. We also found out that there's some capacity issues. And capacity, the problem with capacity is when there's a major event going on or several major events going on, and you have, a catastrophic storm, maybe a large fire going on at the same time, you may not have enough frequencies for your end users to transmit on the radio. The existing system coverage doesn't meet the current public safety standard, which is 95% coverage. We check coverage at what's known as DAQ, DAQ delivered audio quality of 3.4. All that is just a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being unusable transmissions because it can't be heard clearly, up to 5 being the highest, and that's kind of the benchmark is 3.4, where the majority of transmissions are clearly understood and don't have to be repeated. Right now, the current system coverage is about 81% mobile. Portable and street about 44%. So that's way below what the standard is right now. Again, we validated some of these models during the interviews with the end users and also through the signal strength testing. And the map that you see right now is just a plot of the test points that we drove around the county, excuse me, and tested some of these points. These are just 2 examples of coverage maps. The lighter areas are where you have coverage, and the darker areas are areas where there's no or little coverage. And there's a lot of maps, so I only put 2 in. This is a portable in building, and you can see there's not very good coverage at all.
May I ask you a real quick question?
Yes.
Over here. Say again, you say the light areas is where you don't have sufficient coverage?
It's where you do.
Where you do,
Right, it's
okay.
the darker areas where there's no
Okay.
coverage.
I had it just opposite, that's why
Right.
I interrupted. Thank you.
As part of that infrastructure assessment, we found a number of things. As far as the sites, the good thing is your existing sites are in really good condition compared to most systems that we see. They've been well maintained. There's some minor electrical grounding construction issues that are just typical of any system because the grounding systems that were put in when the system was installed have changed and they have to be upgraded. Nothing at all to get really too excited about. They're all things that would be corrected in a new system anyway. As the vendor installs that equipment, usually those problems are part of their scope of work.
Can I pause you for one quick second?
Sure.
So, the infrastructure assessment results, you're saying the white is where it's coverage, and when we flip the page, it says inside of a building. So, when your score was 3.4 and current 81% mobile and portable in the street, 44%, was that taking in the assessment outside of a dwelling or inside of a dwelling?
We do all in-street and in-building, but it's
So
done
it's
through a software model.
So it's combined to come up with those scores?
Right.
Because it looks a drastic reduction when you're inside the building, it looks
Right,
like to me.
exactly. Yeah, the
Okay.
in-building really drops down.
Thank you.
Backhaul, we found a few issues with the backhaul. Again, that's, it can be microwave, T1, or fiber. That's what connects each one of the radio sites together and makes it a system. There's actually a single point of failure between the PSAP and the Mitchell site. That's one problem. Most modern public safety systems have redundancy so that if that connection between the 2 sites is severed, that the radio system would still operate properly. It's using a lower power 4.9 gigahertz microwave, which has less availability than microwave systems that are used in public safety. And it has a secondary license status, which makes it susceptible to interference. I don't believe there's been any to this point, but there could be, and it's not protected by the FCC. Paging relies on the operational condition of the entire system and the backhaul and site, so if any of those components fail, then the paging system wouldn't work either. And that's fairly typical in most systems for that potential for failure to happen, but you can minimize that with some of the redundancy that's built into newer systems.
I'm sorry, but while you're taking a breath, what is PSAP? What is that?
Public safety answering point. That's the dispatch where calls come in and the calls are given back out to the sheriff's office or to the fire rescue.
None of us knew. Okay, we were all wondering what that was, so thank you.
They knew.
We also conducted stakeholder interviews. We interviewed staff from the sheriff's office, fire rescue, dispatch, and other personnel. We wanted to determine any issues with the current system, limitations on the current system, and determine the functional and performance requirements of the end users. We also did an interoperability analysis with the surrounding counties and with the capital region. And the interviews revealed many significant issues. Some we had already seen in the infrastructure assessment. I think that the recurring theme was that there's just not enough coverage and too many dead spots, some in buildings, some in street. And again, it goes back to that not being a public safety grade level of coverage. Capacity was also a large concern that was expressed by many of the end users. Again, the same thing that I reiterated earlier. In a large-scale event, there may not be enough available frequencies to transmit. Audio quality is an issue. A lot of transmissions need to be repeated. This is most likely that the system is degraded somewhat since narrowbanding. That's pretty typical. Interoperability. It's difficult in the area that you're in because of the variety of radio spectrum that's used around the area. Everybody's using something different. VHF, UHF, 700-800 megahertz. Reliability was a big concern, just a general lack of confidence in the system. I believe that's just based on the end user's experience with the system. When they don't have coverage or they can't access a channel, they lose confidence in the system. Some equipment issues, as I noted, a lot of the equipment is at end of life. We heard things like batteries are being held in place by rubber bands because the contacts are worn out, some of those types of things. Displays
So we
on
really
radios
are
not
holding things
working.
together with a Band-Aid, huh?
Right. We also talked about the features that they may or may not have in their current radios and what they'd like to see in a new system. And I will tell you that all of the end users were very, very conservative. There's a lot of bells and whistles out there, and nobody really asked for that. They just wanted the features that they really need to perform their duties, is really what they asked for. Nothing outrageous, nothing out of the ordinary. Emergency alerts, Mayday announcements, intrinsically safe radios. That's a radio that's used generally by fire rescue when they're in a hazardous environment that's not going to cause an explosion or a fire. Extended battery life. The batteries, I believe, right now don't last quite as long as they'd like. Dual band radios, they're a really good aid for interoperability, especially in an area like this where there's multiple frequency bands being used, so you can put two different bands in that radio. Excuse me. Priority access. That means certain people have different levels of priority access on the system. When there's an emergency, someone presses an emergency alert, they get instant access to the system and override everybody else. And just like if you brought any other users on who weren't public safety, they wouldn't have the same priority that fire and rescue or the sheriff's office would have. Scanning, user-defined scan list, that's one that they can program themselves and define their own scan list in each radio rather than have one handed to them. And other features they noted that were critical, but not necessarily, I'm sorry, that should actually say desired, but not critical. I think I have it backwards there. Nice to haves, but they don't really have to have them to perform their duties. And you can see some of the variety of spectrum that's used in the area, and I have to turn up here so I can read it. So Amelia County is using VHF, City of Richmond, Chesterfield County, and Rico County are using 800. Cumberland County is UHF, and Goochland County is VHF. So it complicates interoperability, which is really important for public safety, you know, as they're traveling to other areas, mutual aid, those kind of things. It does complicate it, but it's completely solvable in some of the newer types of systems. And there's a number of different ways you can do that. You can use control stations. You can use dual band radios or something that's called ISSI, which is very expensive, but it works. Interoperability solutions are going to be dependent on what option you pick, because we proposed a number of different options, and the final way we do interoperability is really going to be dependent on that solution. We also reached out to the Capital Region Communications Network. And this was one of the tasks that was assigned to us because there was interest in possibly joining that system. that there might have been some cost savings. So we reached out to them, we got as much information as we could. Right now, they are in process of building a new system. They published a request for proposal. They've received bids back. Right now, they are not releasing any of those specifications until a contract is signed. So number one problem is we didn't have access to their specifications to see if it's a fit for the county. The one thing that was pointed out to us by the Capital Region, when they spec'd this system out, they did not include any other partners other than what was identified. So that system, as it's spec'd, is for the capacity and the needs of those users, from the Airport Commission, Chesterfield County, Colonial Heights, all those other entities. So the problem is, if Powhatan County wanted to join that system and they need additional capacity, you would have to pay for it. They did say they welcome any opportunities for collaboration. They were very gracious in providing information. The significant issue for the county is you still have to upgrade your infrastructure regardless. They will not do it for you. You would have to build a new system, and you would have to follow their specifications. And one of the things that was pointed out to me is in their current system, they were requiring 20 channel sites. You don't need that many. So to join the system, it could actually cost you a lot more than what you would spend to build your own. Because you have to meet their requirements, where you might only need 5 channels or 6 channels, whatever the case might be. You would have to build a 10-channel site, or I'm sorry, 20-channel site, even though you really don't need it. And they have specific requirements. It has to be a P25 trunk system. So again, they expressed the desire for interoperability, and you can see some of the pros and cons of collaborating with them. You would have enhanced interoperability. It is a very robust, wide area network. They have a very good governance model. It would certainly enhance regional communications, but it's not going to solve your immediate problem, and that is that you need a new system and you need new infrastructure. You would still be responsible for your part of the system. You'd have to meet their requirements. And also there's additional costs. I was informed that there would be shared maintenance, all those types of things, system upgrades that would be added to that figure. Unfortunately, not knowing their specifications, we couldn't come up with a price to do that, but I think it's a safe assumption it's going to cost more than building your own system. Again, it's not a viable option because you don't know the final cost of the specifications and some of those other issues. Our recommendation is that once you build a new system, to revisit some of these issues with the Capital Region and explore some interoperability opportunities with them, rather than join the system. You can certainly align yourself for any future opportunities by selecting an 800 megahertz P25 trunk system, which is what they're using. And we'll talk a little bit about that a few slides from now. So now we're just getting into some of our recommendations. We took everything that we found in that infrastructure assessment and from the end user interviews and all the data we collected and all the work we did to come up with recommendations. And the first one is investing any further in the current system just isn't prudent. It's obsolete technology. You're just going to keep putting more money into a system that's antiquated. It would require significant investment, and you still wouldn't be able to reach the desired levels of performance and functionality that's needed by the end users on the system. Again, joining Capital Region is not a viable option at this time. A new system is certainly going to be a substantial investment. There's no question about that. The focus on any new system should be on increased coverage and capacity, redundancy, improved audio quality, interoperability, and enhanced user features, and keeping in mind that it needs to be a public safety grade system. We provided a lot of different options for the county to consider. As far as what we recommend, P25, which is Project 25, It's the de facto standard for public safety systems. And it's been around for a long time. We really, because that is the standard, that's the only thing we would recommend is a P25 system. We would not recommend that you do anything else. Trunk system, we would also recommend because it's going to provide some efficiency. It's going to give you more capacity, as will phase 2. Right now, there's P25 phase 1 or P25 phase 2. Our feeling is that at some point in the future, phase 2 is going to be mandated, or phase 1 is going to become obsolete. So all of our recommendations are to go to phase 2, so you don't have to do an upgrade 10 years down the road.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Williams.
What is P25 and what is a trunk system?
Okay. So P25 is a set of standards that was developed by TIA, APCO, a number of other communications groups. And the intent was to have a common set of standards that allowed vendor-neutral bidding on radio projects. If you know any of the old radio systems were all proprietary. If you bought a Motorola system, you had to buy Motorola equipment, and you were stuck with what they offered you. So it's an open standard that allows multiple bidders and allows multiple types of equipment to be used on a system. You may not always want to do that, because when you buy from one vendor, you get a better price, but it does, it really encourages competitive bidding and better prices on those systems. So a trunk system is just like a trunk telephone system. It's really the same thing. So right now you have 5 channels. The best way to explain this, I do have a chart, but I don't have it with me. If you think about, you walk into the bank and there's 5 tellers. They're like your 5 frequencies. And you know how they put the ropes up to put you in line? And they have 5 lines. And everybody's in line. The first 4 lines, the 5th one's open, but nobody's in those ropes in that last line. It's empty. You can't get to that teller. There's a frequency there, but you can't use it because you're stuck in this other line with a rope between you. In a trunk system, everybody's kind of queued up, and as the next available teller or frequency opens up, you jump in on that. So if sheriff's office is using one frequency, and as soon as they end their transmission, fire rescue wants to get on, they might be using the same frequency again as soon as they get on. It's much more efficient, it gives you much more capacity, and that really is what most public safety agencies are using right now.
So you move seamlessly, between the different channels?
Correct. Everything's done by a controller on the system, a master controller.
Thank you.
In
That's
fact,
helpful.
when these, and you'll see when we talk a little bit about capacity, one of the channels is always dedicated as that control channel.
Thank you.
And again, we would certainly recommend that you select one of the options that we picked that are digital P25 phase 2 trunk systems that fit within your budget. So I have a number of different charts and graphs so you can see. Again, I have to turn to this one to see it. But you'll see these are actually ranked by cost. And when we did this minimum projected cost, I just wanted to point out that we first look at what we think is going to be the list price of a system, and then we look at what kind of vendor discounts have been given in the past on some of our other contracts, and try to estimate your discounted price. One of the things that vendors do all the time is come back with discounted prices. It's part of that whole sales experience with public safety radio systems. The system costs you $20 million, but we're going to give you a 20% discount on this and 20 on this and bring the price down. It could be different than what's here. These are highly negotiable contracts, and a lot depends on the vendors that are bidding and if they want to get into the market or they want to hold their place in the market. So you could get a better price. We tried to be very conservative. It's always better to be a little high than to come in low and then you have to pay more money. So we tried to be as conservative as possible. And you can see they're also rated by coverage. Obviously, the more sites, usually will give you better coverage. We did do what we call a reduced core option. So each option, there's a 1A, a 1B, 2A, a 2B. If you look at any of those, you'll see that the coverage is identical if it's prefixed with a 1 or a 2. The only difference is in the number of talk paths and capacity. It's just using one less frequency, so you get less talk paths. Talk paths, if you have 6 channels, You take one for a control channel, so that's subtract one, you have 5 left. And that phase 2, which is TDMA, gives you 2 top paths per channel, so that's how you wind up with 10. So what that means is there could be 10 simultaneous conversations going on in the county. And one of the things that we looked at is future growth. You know, according to the census, I don't know if they're right or wrong, but they predicted a lot of growth for the county over the next 15 years, 14% by 2020 and another 11%. So we want to give you that extra capacity, not only so that you can handle large-scale incidents, but so you don't have to do an upgrade in the future. Either one of these will work. You can see there's a reduced capacity option, which gives you 8 talk paths. We just cut back 1 frequency, and that's still probably plenty for the county. This is the comparison of each one of the options and the coverage. You can see the orange type is a portable in-building coverage by percent. And again, the blue is portable in street. They were the 2 measurements we used when we spec'd out these various options. And you can see down in the bottom in the left is kind of where you rate now and how it picks up as you go through the different options. And obviously, as the systems get more expensive, the coverage goes up substantially. One other option for the county to consider, and that I put in one of the slides, is to use what's known as a digital vehicle repeater. You'll see some of those options might have 95% mobile coverage in street, and maybe the in-building coverage isn't quite up to that level. You can certainly add digital vehicle repeaters, which is kind of a coverage extender, to get additional coverage. It's a lot cheaper than building sites, but it does have limitations. And this is just a graph showing the long-term cost comparison of different system options. And one of the things to consider is once the vendors propose on this and you select a vendor, there's things beyond the initial system that they're going to ask you to pay for. Long-term maintenance, system upgrade agreements, software agreements, those kind of things. So these are presented to you in kind of like I call it a cafe menu style. And this menu would range, say, for maintenance, hardware maintenance, from they're going to remotely monitor your system through different levels of service. They're going to respond in a certain amount of time, all those kind of things. And you get to pick and choose what you need. Not everybody needs everything that's in their maintenance packages that they offer. Some people only take basic maintenance, some take full boat, everything. It really depends on what you need, and we usually work through that with you and tell you what's good, what's bad. We feel that some of the options are really a waste of money. Don't tell the vendors that's
Mr. Chairman.
So I'm going to ask the same question, David, I guarantee it is.
Go ahead.
So, just so we can read this, so, for instance, the first bar graph shows option 1A, and if we chose just to do grand total system and year 2, 10-year basic maintenance and service, it would take it to a cost, your placeholder's 1A placeholder's 11.2. Is that the placeholder that's in blue? And then if you added more service, it would be red, and if you added more service, it would be the gray? Is that the way I'll read that graph?
Yeah, that would be correct. I think, Mr. Chairman, I think if everyone went to the very last page of the presentation, we've narrowed the options down. You won't have to look at all 12 of the options that came forward.
Oh, we can see
And
that.
Probably much easier to read. So if you want to go all the way to there, and let Jack finish up real quick, the next couple slides, we'll start talking about the
Okay,
different options that
perfect.
the
They couldn't get
committee has
harder.
looked at.
They couldn't get harder.
Head for one.
Yeah, we didn't mean to overcomplicate things, but we want to give you as many options to pick from with various levels of coverage and budget.
Could you
But
give
are
us,
correct. So-
excuse me, sir, could you give us that slide that we were just talking about, that Chief just had us go to the last page to get us away from because we couldn't do the visual acuity?
I do not know if it's in the slide presentation.
It's not, but it is in the PowerPoint.
To narrow down the options so you can see it. Should be,
It's the last page.
Last page.
It is the last page of the
I can see
PowerPoint
that one. I couldn't
presentation.
see the other one with the vertical bar charts, you know, with the small print.
I can certainly get that to you, but it should be big one like this.
Okay. But give me the other one as well, because I want to see all the options.
So just an explanation on these three columns, because they're just above the colors. So if you look at blue, that's your system cost. And what we did is we figured that you'd want at least a second-year basic hardware maintenance included. Typically, an implementation starts, it takes about a year or two to finish, and you certainly don't want to be stuck at the end of that with no maintenance and running out of warranty. So generally, we include that in the price. So the blue column is the grand total for the system and year two basic maintenance. And then the orange is the year 2 to 10 full maintenance and services. And then the gray color, which is the most expensive, would be full maintenance services and 2-year system upgrades. They offer a variety of different upgrades if you want to keep upgrading your system. Some people don't choose that option. Some people want 1 year. We don't ever recommend 1 year because you don't want to go through that every year. Even 2 years is probably a stretch. So again, it comes down to this whole big menu. They're going to give you different options, and you pick and choose what fits the county's needs. And again, maintenance contracts are also something that's highly negotiable. In fact, I'm going through that with another client right now. And again, just about the same thing I just said about them being negotiable and provided in that page side menu, pick and choose the services they need. Just some other additional considerations, and again, they're not really cost drivers, but system management, we always talk a little bit about that when you get this type of newer system, complex system. There has to be better management of the system. If you use a radio, you want to make sure there's people trained in how to deactivate that radio, allow radios to come on the system. You can have the vendor do that, you can have someone trained here. That's part of that specification package we put out, is identify who would do some of these things and make sure the vendor provides the training for someone who's counting. And governance, obviously when you start getting more newer complex systems, you need to have a new governance model, new standard operating procedures for that radio system. And sustainability is also another thing. If you're going to go with some of those upgrades and long-term maintenance agreements, is how do you keep paying for that moving forward? And how long you want to take that. Some people take it for 15 years, some take it for 5 years. So they're just some other considerations. Our next steps, once the county selects a solution, as the chief said, it's been narrowed down to 3. We'll finalize our report and write in some migration planning into that report for that specific system. Right now, that's kind of hard to do because there's so many options out there on the table, but we're getting closer, down to 3 options. Then, again, we would start building the request for proposal. Most of the groundwork is done. That's what we did in the first phase, is to gather the basic information we need to spec out a new system. It's a joint process. We'd be back down here to meet on site with the county end users, go through the specs, refine them until they're final, and then help you put it into the county purchasing document. And of course, we would time that to meet whatever budget timelines you have when it's published. And then once that's out on the street, we would assist the county with reviewing those proposals and making a recommendation for the vendor. And again, we're just here to serve as your partner and help you find that solution and guide you through the rest of the process to a new system.
Mr. Chairman, you ready for questions? I think Chief was going to take us through the last page.
Yeah, let me just go over the committee's results. The committee put together was myself, Floyd Green, Taylor Goodman from Huguenot representing the volunteers, Adam Sadler from the Sheriff's Office, and Randy Buzzard, our IT director. So that was the group that evaluated the systems, and of course several of us have very good knowledge of radio systems. And basically what we've come down to is we feel, like he said, we're being very prudent that we don't need all the flashy stuff that comes with these radio systems these days, and we can reduce some of the capacity because the area that we're in. So the first thing we did is went with the reduced core, which means it's a smaller system that doesn't have to have a large amount of users on it. Depending on how the system is built, there still may be room to put the school buses on there, but that would be something that would need to come, we have to evaluate that once we get the system in place. And of course, as the county grows, then, if we bring on more fire and rescue and more sheriff's department, then that would push the buses to a lower priority on the system, honestly. But that is a possibility. It depends on, these are all conceptual designs right now until the vendors actually come in and give you a solid design of what they say they will do. We wouldn't know the exact capacity that way. So we went with the reduced core, like the recommendations were. We did want to go to phase 2 P25, which is the industry standard. And then we looked at the number of tower sites and the coverage. So the committee is going with option 1B, which is an 8-site system. That's what we recommend. But we did want, if you see there, the in-building coverage is 82%, and both myself and Chief Deputy Sadler felt that we want to be up to 90%. So we have asked Kimball to go back when we go further to bring it up. So even though it says 8 sites, we still have a gap in the west end of the county, so it might require the building of 1 tower. This site they have system they have designed right here is using existing towers and would not need any tower infrastructure.
Okay,
with
that
the
was
8
one of my
sites.
questions, was that these coverages were currently using the tower sites that were listed on the front?
With
No.
1B, correct. That one does not recommend any tower sites that need to be built.
Okay.
So, but we did want to go ahead with the vehicle repeater system to help with the coverage inside the buildings. So we either need that or another tower. We'd have to move from conceptual designs into the actual design that the vendor brings forward. So we're recommending 1B with the DVRS, which puts it about $9 million system cost. But then we're also looking at, we need to take in consideration the 15 site. That would give us the full coverage in the street, 99% in the street and 95% in building coverage. But that would require the building of 3 towers in the conceptual design. 2 of those in the west end of the county, and I believe 1 towards Fine Creek. So we wanted to keep that option open too, because I know that the county's looking at their broadband initiative, and that would give the county infrastructure towards the west end of the county. And I can't guarantee it, but I think if we put towers up in the west end of the county, most of the cellular providers would come knocking on the door going, we would like to come up on your tower, and we might be able to repay for them that way and have the better system. But overall, the committee does recommend that we go with the 8 system. We can live with that, with just the 8-site system.
So, just a question, I know you're not a cell tower expert, but, and Mr. Williams and Mr. Tucker and I sat on the planning commission, and every cell tower that I approved had a co-location opportunity on it for the county. Maybe Floyd can answer this question. And so, if we have towers that we have not used, for instance, one of the towers that just, most recent tower was the one over off of Rocky Ford Road and Quarter Mill Road.
Or Southside Electric on
I mean,
Three Bridge
there's
Road.
some tower sites
Right.
that are not, now, I don't know if Southside Electric, we had an agreement with them because it may have been predated us on the commission, asking for co-location opportunities. So is that something that we would be trying to capture, or did we not get co-location opportunities?
It does. Floyd can answer it probably a little better. But you have to understand when you're designing, when Kimball or the vendors are designing this system, they do have to have certain equipment in certain areas. So
I understand.
if it doesn't line up with where there's co-location.
And it may already have adequate coverage there, but.
Right. Of course, we're going to try to get as many co-locations as we can, use that information. You have any more, Floyd?
Yes, sir. Floyd Green, basically say I've been system manager for the various radio systems in the county since 1982. We've been getting, since the late 80s, early 90s, we've been getting proffers for use of towers, and they vary from unlimited to very limited, depends on how the proffers were written and all. So we have some that are currently, right now, we have free use in some towers, and some of them we're having to pay rent on for our current system. So what their proposals, different ones, use various different towers over the county. Some of the systems, for instance, the one you were specifically talking down off of Palmer Road, for instance, that's one of them that we have a proffer to use. Depends on the final design. We don't know whether really that's going to end up a tower or not.
Okay.
You know, ABC radio service might say, yes, we want to put a tower there. BCD radio company
Understand.
might be, their proposal say, no, we don't want to use that one, but we could suggest using this one.
Okay.
And then we're going to get into negotiations and to whether the tower really has capacity or not, how much it costs, because, you know, again, some are free use, some we might have to pay rent. That's going to be later in the selection.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Williams?
Floyd, don't go away. All right, so I can understand, when we go out and we request a design study, are we going to specify in the design study to use the existing towers, incorporate a design, or are we going to tell them, give us a study, and show us, based on requirements where we don't have cell coverage and need to be cell towers, you talked about 3 more towers. Is that going to be incorporated?
Well, it's not cell, but it's a public safety communication system, and I think the best thing, the specifications would say 90% coverage in buildings, and 95% coverage, whatever. This is what our specifications are. You tell us what's going to take to do it. And I say, company one might say this, this, and this, and company two might say this, this, and this. And then you got to select it, comparing there, and there. That's what their company would do, would be look at what they're proposing, they're going to look at where they're going to say which towers, and
Okay.
compare it. So you
So
compare not
you've
only
answered my
price.
question. You've set the threshold at 90-some% of whatever it is, and then they're going to figure out how to get to that threshold.
Yeah, 8,
And if they
right now
can't-
they're thinking 8 towers, some company might say 9. If all your vendors come back and say you need 9 towers, all the vendors come back and say 6 towers, well, they're gonna make them prove it. That's what we're gonna hire them to do.
Right, and Floyd's correct, so we're gonna put out that spec for whatever coverage level you want. We will also tell them that these are the existing sites that can be used, or might be some other sites we identified that might be for use, but they're not constrained to those sites. They need to meet those coverage requirements. And our
Understand.
conceptual design, it's done as that baseline. Like Floyd said, when they come back and say, oh, we need to build 20 sites to give you this coverage, we can show them, no, you don't. You only need 8 to get to this level. But the key is they have to come back with that design to make the guarantee. They won't guarantee our design. They have to come in,
No.
propose a design, say it's gonna work, and then guarantee it.
So, but we don't want to get into, building any more towers than we need to.
Correct. And one of the things that we did is, even as we did these, and we needed more sites, we would use a combination of existing sites and just a few new sites to keep that cost.
Well, I would hope we would look at existing sites, going back to what Mr. Melton had said earlier. If we got some co-location opportunities on existing towers and it shows up in the study that we need coverage in that particular area, I would hope we'd go there first.
Right, and absolutely, and that's the way, in fact, the option with the reduced core 1B is actually all co-location sites. Now, to get into some of those higher ranges, there are just some areas where there aren't any co-location sites that are going to give you that kind of coverage, and if you start moving to that tier, you're going to wind up building some new sites. But we tried to keep as many co-locations in the mix to keep that cost down. We always want to avoid construction, whenever possible.
So if you could find a broadband provider that would build you 3 towers and take $1 million off, then that would be one of the options that you could look at as you think about the broadband picture. I mean,
That's a separate study, and I thought we were going to be looking at opportunities where, we could, do the cross-referencing of the towers such that, we could, whatever we did, with design for broadband would complement what we were doing, with the emergency broadcast system.
And hopefully it will. It's the problem with, like you said, we need co-located on as many towers to fit the need there. As we all know, it's the infrastructure in the west end of the county. We don't have towers out there even to try to co-locate on.
I understand.
That are in the coverage areas up in Trenholm
I
and
understand.
deep down back. Those are the places that we would need to build those towers. That's what I'm saying, that if the county did go ahead and do that and put the broadband through it also, I think you would get the cell providers also to come out there and hopefully pay us rent on this. So
Well, that's part of the business plan for the broadband, isn't it?
hopefully, yes.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before they go away, we have a new broadband committee now. Seems to me it'd be a good idea for y'all to sit down with them at some point and have a workshop type of event, so you can coordinate. Maybe I'm missing something, but are you?
That's why Randy from our director of IT was on the committee and was seeing the options that were coming forward.
On
Okay,
the agenda tonight is an update on the broadband initiative, and so we can either go into broadband now, or we can, I haven't been responding because I'll be giving an update. It's on the agenda, but if you want me to respond now, I could do that, or we can wait until it's on the agenda.
why don't we just wait?
I'm good waiting. I just want to bring up the point
Right.
that this is a perfect opportunity for the two groups, if you will, to blend and work this out, and then we can have it all done. You can bring a proposal that we know already works, and boom. So it seems a time saver.
We're already doing that, sir, thank you.
If I may, I spent about 4 hours today with the GIS coordinator for the county,
going over the broadband studies work papers back to the county, proofreading where the towers are, both county and others, that, identifying both what they had, what we had had, and proofing that out. So, I mean, we are already working them
Already
to help
doing
them out
Okay.
already.
I guess part of my question, Floyd, is, I just put up for appointment, and he just got it, a citizen from my district, Jamie Duncan, and I know he hasn't been part of this. So is the whole broadband committee, if you will, doing this, or maybe, Pat, you want to?
Again, do you want me to update you on the broadband now, or wait? I haven't been responding because. Do you want me to update you now, or would you like to wait till it's on the agenda?
Oh,
It-
what
it's
the heck.
It's on the agenda, so.
Do it the easiest way, whatever that is.
Joe-
I'll yield the floor.
Joe has a question, I think pertains to this, and he does this.
Joe does, and and I appreciate, because this is not a school issue, and I'm respectful of that.
That's
Can I just
okay.
ask a couple simple questions, I think? What is the solution you're going to use to maintain connectivity with CERS? Is that going to be a separate radio in the car, or are you going to try to use a different frequency here?
That's a good question. Adam, come on, you gotta come over here too. It's the same problem that we have with the HEAR radios that we're required to carry with EMS. By having dual band radios, we'll be able to continue to be on the state EMS frequency that we're required to have by license also.
Yes.
How we're handling that. CERS,
Right.
We currently have CERS in all of our cars, and that's where our intention is to continue. Unfortunately, most of our stuff is getting older, so we are having to replace a little bit here and there, which takes the span of the coverage from really, really big to a little bit smaller, because you're going from, and Will from radio communication can kind of correct me, you're going from like a 120-some system to like a 70 watt system. So your coverage is going to go down, but we're still going to have that in the sheriff's cars.
Okay.
We have no intentions of getting rid of that.
Right, so you're going to maintain a separate radio for the CERS system. You probably have a different unit in there right now.
We have separates in our cars now, so
Okay. What you are contemplating, is this going to support mobile data technology for you, or are you going to look at a different alternative for that, like a cellular signal?
currently, we are on a cellular
Okay.
signal. Originally, it was part of the original radio system. The
Okay.
problem is that they stopped making parts for that system, and it was outdated, so we had to switch over to, we got some grants and that sort of stuff, and we're able to switch all over to cellular. So that's part of our cellular bill that we get monthly for not only our cell phones, but also for the computers in the car.
All right, so you're supporting the MDTs in the cars with that cellular connectivity, and you've got coverage on a countywide basis for that?
Yeah, there are a couple spots, for instance, between Red Lane and Dorset Road that you may drop it, but I mean, you're only talking about a little small area, and then you come right back out of it.
All right. And can you support data transmission with that signal? Can you support images and that sort of thing from
Absolutely.
MDT to MDT?
Yes.
Okay. The only last question I have is, does this contemplate encryption for some of the frequencies to be used for, particularly for law enforcement purposes, data encryption on the frequencies?
That is an option within this type of system with the computer things and the adjusting and setting that we could do.
Yes, sir.
My indication from Madam so far has been is the Sheriff's Department, except for maybe some tactical frequencies, are not interested in encrypting everything.
Perfect. Well,
As
no,
you-
no,
As you would
no.
see, other jurisdictions are going to encrypt everything. There's no need.
Right, and I agree, but sometimes there are transmissions that you do want to encrypt, and this will accomplish that for you from a law enforcement perspective, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Thank you, Joe. A lot of data. And just for the board's information, we have a placeholder in our CIP in 17, about $15 million. So that placeholder's there. Been there.
Yeah, in the adopted CIP, the placeholder is about 7 million, that's what we were asking. In the CIP that was just distributed to you on Monday, it is now 15 million. It is 15 million because, as I said on Monday, we wanted to leave that option to the board as to whether or not to put towers in the west end of the county to accommodate broadband. So that's why in the current CIP that you just received, it's now $15 million.
Thank you, Pat.
And that would also be part of the part of the stuff that we'll be waiting on to do the RFP is decide which way you want to go with that, because it would depend on the percentage of stuff in the street to do it.
We understand.
We'll be standing by, and we'll be working with the broadband people to line up the town.
Chief and sir, thank you very much for your presentation. It's been very helpful to us to get better information to be able to make the best informed decision we can, so.
And we do have the final conceptual report from Kimball. It's, very thick. It's 100 and some pages. I didn't think you wanted that tonight, obviously, but it's available if you'd like a copy. Mr. Williams, I'll get you a copy so you can see all the specifics. And all of the maps, they have map coverages for all the options and
Thank you.
positives and negatives. We can get you a copy of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to 7C. We're not going to do broadband, right? Unless you want to move broadband.
We
in
have
front of Sally Port.
no, we have a consultant here waiting, and so we were doing the
Sally Port?
report that doesn't involve a consultant last.
That's
So we have a
fine. So
consultant waiting on the Sally
Absolutely like
Port,
to have the
if that's okay.
person come up and do the Sally Port.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and school board. The Sally Port project, the county is working with Mosley Architects, and Josh Bennett, who's our project manager, and Tony Bell here with this evening. Just to give you a little bit of background, this started out with kind of that, I guess it was Wiley Wilson did the master plan for the county on the space needs, and they had that Sally Port addition to the back of the courthouse, and we worked off of that last year in the CIP and got your approval to go out and do the design. Our process thus far, and I'm touch on it a little bit, we want to really thank Judge Sella, Judge Southall, former Sheriff Neal, and Chief Singer. They participated in the needs assessment questionnaire. We met with Judge Sella and the chief to talk about some of the issues. Through that, we identified some needs. Primarily here, we were looking for that space for the 911 communication system center to be at. And then as part of the process, we've also identified some security issues within the existing courthouse that we've tried to address in the design here. So with having said that, I'll turn it over to Josh and let them go through.
I believe the copies are now being handed at the end of the dais.
Okay.
And they're coming.
Copies of the needs assessment surveys, schedule, and cost.
Okay.
Thank you all for having us here tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to update you on this project. As Mr. Altman said, we're here at his request to kind of give you an idea of where we are. In the interest of time, we don't have a PowerPoint. We have the deliverables that we've produced thus far. They consist of the project schedule, some project budgets, the building program, and the building questionnaires that Mr. Altman alluded to. I'll walk you through the process very briefly of how we got here. After we were awarded the project, we began by distributing a questionnaire that was pointed at the individual uses within the building. And Judge Southall, Judge Sella, former Sheriff Neal, and Chief Singer filled those questionnaires out. We received those back to our office and then met with them on site to review the existing facilities and discussed with them the needs that were represented in those questionnaires. From there, we developed a building program which established this amount of square footage that we'd be looking at building. And once we received approval of that program, we began the schematic design process, which you can see we have the first go at the layout for the building here in front of us. We have not met with the individual users yet to review these layouts, so you guys are getting to see these hot off the press. All right, so that takes us through the schedule. The needs assessment, as Mr. Altman indicated, do include the indoor secure Sally Port for the transfer of prisoners to the existing courtrooms. Included in that is a search room and a control room. The 911 Communication Center does include a new server room, space for the workstations, and additional staff space, such as a toilet room, break room, and director's suite. Also included is the General District Court Judges Chambers and a mild expansion of the JNDR Court. Their room right now is very tight, so we've been able to kind of give them about an extra 5 or 6 feet to give them a little space. So, looking at the
Mr. Chairman, excuse my interruption. The sheriff is here. Have you got a copy of this? We have an extra copy up here. If send somebody to get it. Sorry for the interruption.
Thank you, Carson.
Mr. Chairman. Excuse my interruption, sir.
All right. I think there's another PDF ahead of that one, actually, which is... Is it the number one on this? Okay, you go to the second.
Thank you.
And then we'll start with the second. Yes, sir. Yeah. All right, so this is the, we'll call it the basement floor plan of the Sallyport. If you're familiar with the existing building is here on the left. The main courtroom is just on the far left-hand side there. You've got the secure parking and the judges' parking here on the right. And the idea here is to bring a pull-through Sallyport in. And so you'll come into the upper plan north portion of the plan. You'll enter into the building, park the van or the vehicle, and then remove the prisoners, and then pull the van out straight. So there's no back in, back out with this plan. All right, there is space inside to park secure vehicles such as cruisers or other vans as necessary. The search room is seen there in yellow, the kind of far left yellow piece, and that's a secured room where it would be interlocked, where if you needed to unload one prisoner, secure them, and then quickly unload another prisoner before the van exited, that's where you would do something like that. And then the secure control room, where the sheriff's staff could monitor things like cameras, card readers, things like that. The stairs and elevator in the lower left-hand corner of that building addition would serve the upstairs portion, the 911 portion of the building. So that would give the E911 staff space to come in and out on their own. So that would give them their own secure entry. All right, if we can go back up to that other plan. Thank you, Dan. All right, so this is the upstairs portion of that, and this is really kind of one of the bigger space drivers. You can imagine this thing is two layers, right? If you'll notice in your program, if you look at that later on, it's got about 1,800 square feet programmed for the basement, which is the Sallyport. It only makes sense it would be on the ground level. E911 on the second floor, and the judges' areas would have about 2,600 square feet. So they're kind of the driver on this. That's the larger space need overall. In the right-hand side there in blue is the 911 communications. The green square is the new judges' chamber, and then the two light violet colors there are the JNDR judges' chambers immediately adjacent to the JNDR courtroom. All right, within the 911 area is room for four workstations, the director's office, the IT manager's office, a new IT support room which would hold all of the equipment, all the new radio equipment, would have specialized heating and cooling to keep that equipment conditioned, a break room and a toilet room so that they're not having to leave that suite at any time, so they can continue to serve the county. Okay. Included in the packet are two budgets. All right. In our original proposal, we included a budget that showed $350 a square foot for the cost of the building, which we felt would be reasonable given the intricate nature of the 911 facility and the smaller size of the addition. This is touching an existing historic courthouse. There is some sensitivity to that, so we did budget that accordingly. After the programming phase to meet the current need, we found that we were a little higher on our square footage than we had originally anticipated by, I think it was about 800 square feet. So we provided another budget that shows us at $270 a square foot for the building addition to try to be in line with the CIP value of $2.4 million. What does that mean? Does that mean that we can't afford the project? It just means that moving forward, we may need to make some concessions in terms of quality or get some direction from the county in terms of scope. What scope reductions could we have to bring that back in line? We've talked with our estimators about this. We can certainly move forward with the project and get a more detailed cost estimate at the end of schematic design that is included in our services.
We're here to also answer some questions you may have, Mr. Altman, on the
We're going to go back out and we can talk to our stakeholders, let them review the plan, finalize everything with us.
I don't have any questions at this time. I think getting the material tonight and being able to digest it, read it, look at it, glancing through some of the space assessment needs questionnaires are pretty interesting, reading some of the answers that were there.
Sure.
From the different stakeholders that were questioned. And then I did speak with Mr. Beasley, Judge Beasley. Of course, he didn't have a questionnaire, but he did talk to me about this project months and months ago, so.
Great. Thank you all very much for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Hold on, you cut Carson?
So, Mr. Chairman, I dismiss Alvin. Sheriff Nunn will leave the top of the list, right? Okay.
Well, everyone will get a chance to go back out and do the meetings again with everybody. So
All the stakeholders.
Yeah,
Judge Sella will be the talk.
yeah, this isn't the last time that anyone's going to hear from us in the process, certainly. I'll back up a little bit to the schedule, I apologize. Where we are now, we're in the beginnings of schematic design, so the schedule shows getting to 50% schematic design and then 100% complete and schematic design review and approval. Likely, we're going to have at least one meeting here at the beginning of SDs to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the individual users. And then they'll have another chance to review those plans once we've incorporated any of their comments to confirm that we've met their needs. Moving forward into design development, they'll get another chance to review those plans. We will go in and sit down with them and talk about space upfit, things like that. Do you need casework? Do you need, what kind of doors do you need? What kind of glass do you need? Then we'll move into construction documents and finally detail the building. And we do plan on still being ready to bid the project and be under construction in September of this year.
Wow. Perfect. Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all very much.
7D now is update on the broadband initiative. I think we can get that now, Pat.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, jumped ahead. I'll try it.
The Broadband Initiative Committee has recently been completed with the last appointment that took place on Monday. So that is correct, they have not yet met. However, staff has continued to work on the project, even though the committee has not yet met. We will be now scheduling a meeting of the committee, an organizational meeting. I wanted to give you an update on what staff has been doing. We have now, are working with our RPDC. They will be our grant writer for the project. We have met with approximately 5 consultants, including the consultant who wrote the previous plan. As reported to you earlier, we've made the decision not to update the previous plan, and we did that in consultation with our neighbors in Orange County and also in consultation with CIT at the state. We meet next week with our RPDC on possible grant, we meet next week with our RPDC on possible grant opportunities, and we also meet next week with CIT on the development of the RFP. We also have met and have discussed how, with Louisa County, Orange County, and St. Charles City County, and looked at how they have done their broadband initiative, and also our contact at the CIT previously worked in Franklin County. So we have different county models that we're looking at and which model would work best for the county. And as previously reported, at this point in time, it appears as if the wireless microwave option is the option for the county. We're still looking at others. And in most cases, it will be the county's responsibility to put in infrastructure, i.e. towers, for the wireless microwave. Others, such as St. Charles City, did receive grants that paid 100% of their towers, so we're exploring that option. But I do not believe you would get the broadband companies who provide wireless microwave to put in the large infrastructure of the towers. We also have meetings that our Orange County has put us in contact with I'm sorry, I lost, the name has escaped. It's the broadband, the statewide broadband committee authority.
Well, it's the group that ran the line.
Right, that did and I'm sorry, it escaped both of our minds, but
Ran the one up 13?
Yes.
Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, thank you. Orange County is putting us in contact with Mid-Atlantic, and we're getting that meeting scheduled. The county administrator of Orange County was on that committee for many, many years and is putting us in contact with those. So we will be looking at options for possibly expanding fiber through the county in certain locations through Mid-Atlantic. However, we have not yet had that meeting. We're still exploring that. And again, we are getting the citizen committee together, and we'll report to you when we have that first meeting. So we did not want to stop progress waiting for the committee to get organized. We have continued to move forward on it. And as Floyd reported, the Public Safety Communications Group radio system is working closely with the broadband group. It's the broadband group. Our crossover between the two is our IT director, who happens to be on both. But we have been working very closely with CIT, mapping out every single tower in the county, confirming it with Floyd, and we have that map is complete. And we are talking closely, and that is why when we put out the communications, the radio system RFP, they knew that we were looking at possible location of microwave or possible location of broadband infrastructure on whatever towers might be needed for the radio system.
Thank you, Pat.
Mhm.
Obviously, we have, since October when we had our first community meeting, a lot's been going on behind the scenes, and I applaud staff. And I did sit on one of the conference calls with CIT, Mr. Buzzer, IT director, yourself, and I, and the young lady at CIT was very knowledgeable and been a great help to us, I'm sure. I want to also say I applaud the schools for doing their survey. I did get phone calls from people who, had gotten phone calls from the schools about did they have the ability to meet their educational needs. And so I think that's just all part of this package as we put this together and we start looking for providers to meet and talk about demand. So thank you. Any other questions on the broadband? Thank you, Pat.
Before you go into public comment, I do have one other announcement, and that
Okay.
is on the dais in front of the school board members is a copy of the county's CIP. It's in the black binder, and in addition to that, we have included in there as reference information the CIP that came from the school board. It's also in there. And we have also handed out to all of the school board members their copy of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the CAFR, which is also called the audit. And there's 2 other reports from the auditors included. And also for you is a response letter from the Director of Finance of the county, Charlotte Schubert, and the Associate Superintendent for Finance of the schools, Larry Johns, as well as a memo from Faye Barton. So just wanted to point those out, what is in front of
Thank
the
you.
dais.
Thank you, Pat. So at this time, we'll have our second public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward at this time.
Floyd Green, as I said, been employed with the county for 26 years now and actually managed the communications equipment for the sheriff's office as a volunteer for 6, 7 years before that. Just want to make one comment. Earlier, the sheriff made the comment about his opinion didn't need the Sally Port aspect, and I'm not addressing that aspect of it. But just keep in mind, and I know there's tight times on the CIP, and that might be, they say, well, it's a quick way to save some money on that, but it does provide the additional space, additional location for the PSAB dispatch office. I can't imagine trying to put a $8 to $10 million system, radio communication system for our public safety that we desperately need and try to cram the infrastructure and run that out of the existing space that we have there. It almost goes hands in hand. If you're not going to build a Sally Port, or you're going to have find some kind of space for, a public safety. No matter who operates it, whether it's county, whether it's sheriff, whether it's a joint board, or whoever runs it, it still needs the space in there needs to be thought about. So that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
Taylor Goodman, serve as the fire chief for the Huguenot Volunteer Fire Department in the eastern end of the county. And I just wanted to add just a little bit more substance to what Floyd just addressed. I have no stake in what the sheriff's office does with their detainees or the use of the Sally Port or not. Again, not here to address that. As Floyd said, it's unconscionable not to move forward on a replacement 911 center. My background prior to entering the fire service was in dispatch for 2 different law enforcement agencies, and have worked in cramped 911 centers, have worked in very well-equipped 911 centers, and we cannot sustain this new radio system nor the anticipated growth of the county, the additional staffing we're going to need to handle 911 calls, to handle radio traffic and things like that. So should the Sallyport not move forward, I would implore the board and or the county to look forward about the relocation of the 911 center, whether it's still within that same facility or elsewhere in the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else, I'll close the public comment period. We don't have board comment periods, but I guess if anybody would like to make a comment, that would not bother me at all.
Just very briefly, really appreciate the school board staying with us to this, because so much of this is overlapping, even if it's indirect, and you all being here and sticking with us for the whole thing is very helpful.
I agree. One comment I have is, the fire report we got presented to us feels like a couple days ago, but it was last night. It referenced the dispatch office many times in there as being inadequate and space needs, and actually I think it said we needed a few more dispatchers, to be honest. But it referenced in that report many times the dispatch situation we have. So thank you, Floyd and Taylor, for bringing that forward as part of what we should be thinking about.
Mr. Chairman, just really quick, I just want to echo that too. The first thing that hit my mind when Sheriff Nunley said we don't need a Sallyport was, that's going to be very tempting for the Board of Supervisors to say, oh, good, we can scratch that off as a line item and save X millions of dollars. That is very tempting to do. And we need to guard ourselves, in my opinion, against doing that. And thank you for coming up and speaking to that. Because there's more to consider than just that side of it, I guess. So we need to take just as hard a look at it, in my opinion, as we would have regardless. That's it.
Any other comments? Not, can we get a motion to adjourn?
So move for the Board of Supervisors.
We're adjourned. How about the school board?
Motion for adjournment, and so moved.
Second.
Aye.
Adjourned. Thank you. Oh, we got out before 9 o'clock. My wife will be happy. She got home at 12 the other night. She had That's a green balloon, but I was quiet.